Now in studio, I have Professor George Wagakoyah, who is a lawyer and doubles up as a political analyst. Good morning, Prof,
Thank
and
you.
welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, Prof, before even we talk about the Law Society of Kenya, and perhaps what the new faces are going to deliver for the LSK, let's talk about the turnout. Apparently, most lawyers did not come out to vote in big numbers. What does this say about the Law Society of Kenya?
Before I answer that question, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the incoming members. Let me congratulate my friend, Alan Gichui. And before I came in, I spoke with him yesterday. And I also spoke to Mwamu because I've been harmonizing both of them.
I think that is what is missing at LSK now, because
yes.
people are divided along,
Yes.
old and young lawyers. Some are divided along political lines. So let me get this picture straight
Yes.
from the turnout yesterday.
Yes, the turnout was very low because of reasons unknown to myself, but I can only guess. What I can only guess is probably most lawyers have litigation in court and the courts were functioning. And probably some of them just decided to stay at home. But one thing that I know is that most of the lawyers who are, Nairobi County has got the highest concentration of lawyers, and I'm told that most of them turned out, and probably that was the age that gave colleague Alan an upper hand.
Let's talk about the council itself. There are critics who say that the LSK has lost its credibility. I mean, it's become partisan. It's divided along, party lines. Of course, there's the new age limit issue. It's the young and old lawyers are divided. I mean, let's talk about the entree of the new president. What is it supposed to do?
Alan Gichui is actually a reformer. He's a man who reached out to me, and I was very surprised getting somebody of that influence and magnitude reaching out to a small person like me. And he reached out to me, he just asked me, how do I go here? What do I do there? But having said that, there is this caveat in the Law Society that ought to be removed once and for all. The issue of age limitation, that is very archaic, and it's something that defeats the purpose of the Constitution. The Constitution itself is very clear. It talks of non-discrimination, both direct and indirect.
Yes.
Now, if you get a body like the Law Society coming up and playing the field of discrimination and therefore rendering young lawyers, and probably that's why most of them did not show up or turn up, that in itself does not make no sense. Look at Harvey himself. Harvey is a very dynamic lawyer, and you can see his performance. It wasn't very appropriate for the Law Society to put in caveats because of their archaic regulations that barred Harvey from running.
Yes.
I'm sure if Harvey ran, maybe we'll be speaking a different story altogether. But there is that gap between the old school, very conservative lawyers and the young men who have learned through the ropes, especially when it comes to pupillage, where young men have been treated differently, where the old school has always been domineering in the market of legal lawyering, where they have all the tenders, pre-qualifications, and that actually has to be toned down by opening up room for young lawyers who come in with new and vibrant ideas. And furthermore, most of the lawyers we have today, especially in the 10-year bracket of practice, have actually gone overseas. They have come back with something new that they would like it to be applied here. But when you look at the regulations and the procedures, I think we are still living in the 1948, the colonial era, where regulations that were pegged on civil law or on common law at that particular time are still prevalent. But if you go to UK, where I'm very much familiar to, and you go to the US, where I'm also very familiar with the jurisdiction of practice, you'll find out that things have changed. Yeah, so it's a
So do you think the new president might bring the reforms that are required within the Law Society of Kenya? And perhaps clearly what you've pointed, there's a clear division within LSK, the older young lawyers. Of course, it has become some sort of people are affiliated towards their political or party lines. So what do you think the new president should do to bring these lawyers together?
He has promised to call in men like myself.
Yes.
And I'm sure that we are going to work as a team, even though I know that there is the council working independently because of elections. But Alan has promised some of us with various expertise in various areas of law, like surrogacy, which has not been practiced in this country, immigration which I'm an expert in that area, which ought to be introduced through the Council of Legal Education with the support of Law Society. So when that time comes, actually we shall sit together and harmonize relationship, first of all, between the old and the young, and the disparities thereafter, and also look at the relationships between the Law Society and other arms of government, like the police. It is not there. Isaac Okero, who is a friend, has been the total failure. He's one man who has brought Law Society right to its knees. He's never taken any public interest matters by actually envisioning himself through amicus curiae as a friend of the court. He has brought up this issue of partisanism, partisan politics. You remember when he came up with Okoa elections, Okoa Kenya, something like that. That was pegged on ODM philosophy of Okoa Kenya. So to me, that was like an ODM outfit. I'm sorry to say this, but that's how it looks like. But Alan is a very middle class. Alan is a person who has gone through the trades of practice. If you look at his background, he had that background of non-spoon-fed background. And I've spoken to him at length. And is a person who is willing to go down there to listen to other lawyers and take their issues. If you look at the issue of pupillage, for example, if you go to the UK, there is a central box where lawyers who want pupillage, they have to apply through that central box so that pupils are actually supplied through a system. And there is remuneration of pupils. And I hope Alan is going to look into this, because we have had complaints about female lawyers being mistreated by their principals. We have had gender issues. We have had young lawyers who work as pupils not being paid.
Actually, speaking about gender issues at the Law Society of Kenya, it seems like there's some sort of unwritten law that, women are supposed to run for the deputy president position and not the president position. What does that
I haven't seen that, but if that is the case, then I don't think whether it's right, because we have had Rachel Mamo being the president of LSK, and I think that's just the tradition within the norms. But women have actually come up in large numbers, and as a matter of fact, right now we have more female lawyers than male lawyers.
Is it?
In my opinion, because if you look at how Alan was able to sail through in the absence of Harvey and in the absence of whatever, you'll find out that he attracted the younger generation, and they were like looking at him as a beacon of hope because of his reaching out. I'm not saying that Mwam was not reaching out. Mwam reached out. When I called them to my house for a press briefing, and I called also Alan, and I also called Harvey, they were willing to come even though Alan was away. But Alan has a touch base with the younger lawyers. So it's Mwamu.
And maybe that is what informs his win last night. Now, let's talk about the rule of law. Immediately after he was declared the winner, during his interview, he said that, he likes to have a situation where everybody respects the rule of law. And that doesn't seem to be the situation in the country. And now, what do you think LSK needs to do? We've seen the Yellow Ribbon campaign. Apparently, the court boycott was suspended in the last 11th hour. So what do you think LSK needs to do, perhaps, to make sure that we have in a society, in a country, that people have respect for the rule of law?
First of all, they don't need to radicalize the society. They need to work from the middle. They need to also get the notion that they're custodians of civil liberties. And as such, they need to reach out to other government agencies in a market-friendly, tolerable manner. That attitude that has been there before, where the regime of Mr. Okero never did anything to reach out to other government agencies, and even if they did, we don't know of. We need to harmonize the relationship. We need to go it slow. We need to learn what is wrong and how do we come to rectify this. We need to look at all those regulations that run the Law Society and find out whether they can be changed, and then a bill instituted thereafter by through the Attorney General office or what have you. We need also to find out what is wrong with the Kenya School of Law. What is wrong with the Kenya School of Law? If you look at the kind of education that is being given there, and I'm saying it openly, I'm ready to go to court for this. The standards have gone very down. Is it because of capacity? They don't have proper infrastructure? I'm speaking this because I went into training elsewhere and I saw the way I was being trained. And I also came to Kenya School of Law and I saw the way I was being taught. Something needs to be done, and Alan plus the Council of Legal Education has to come out. And finally...
And strange enough, a lot of law students fail when it comes to the...
Yes, that's what I'm saying. There's something wrong between Kenya School of Law and Council of Legal Education. First of all, Kenya School of Law has been run by somebody who was not even an advocate for many years. And this man ruined the chances of advancement. How can you take a medical doctor a doctor to run a medical school without actually being on a board of medical practitioners? How would you take a non-advocate run an advocate institution? That is Mr. Kulundu. Kulundu has run down the school. And
so do you think those are some of the issues perhaps the new face of the LSK might address?
Yeah, the argument here is very common. Here I am the principal of a law school, but I was not trained to be an advocate. I am not an advocate. How do you expect me to create efficiency? And that's what has brought in. And then look at the Council of Legal Education in terms of examination. The Law Society, the Kenya School of Law teaches student, and somebody is contracted to mark that student. How? And then another thing is, instead of students sitting for the exam at the Kenya School of Law, they now go to Quer University to sit, being supervised by somebody and somebody else marking up your exam. And there are issues recently where a daughter of the former Attorney General was found sitting in an exam by herself. How? Something ought to be done. The whole of Kenya, the Council of Legal Education should be disbanded. And Alan should work towards finding out whether the Attorney General, the new Attorney General, can come up and really constitute working conditions.
Clearly he has his work cut out for him.
Yes, and we are going to help him.
Let's talk about a totally different subject.
Thank you.
We talked about the debt in this country reaching a whopping 5.4 trillion Kenya shillings, up from just 100 million shillings back in 1963. And apparently IMF has also warned Kenya that the country is drifting towards what they've termed as a debt crisis if the government's appetite for new loans is not checked. They're saying Kenya's debt is approaching unsustainable level. There's also another report by the International Monetary Fund, which has put Kenya in a very bad position, although there's some sort of an improvement. But still, Kenya's still down there, you know, when it comes to matters corruption. So apparently the government is also acquiring some, is it 200 billion shillings through the Eurobond. So how will Kenyans, I mean, have faith in a government that, you know, still is marred by corruption?
The corruption is an issue which is at the bottom. Let's not even address corruption. Let us address issues that lead us to borrow. If you look at the IMF programs in the early 60s, they came up with what we call structural adjustment programs, where countries were supposed to adjust to a particular rhythm, supervised by the World Bank, before they were given loans on condition that A, B, C, D were done. Now, if you look at sustainable development and economic development in that particular perspective, you come out that the development of economics without some kind of checks and balances in those particular days led to countries over-borrowing, because what they didn't come into was how would they sustain those loans and the interests that came along with the loans. What about issues that came in to affect the countries? If you may remember, during, I don't know that you were there, but during Kenyatta's time, Kenyatta's, the former president, the first president, he had a technocrats who were economists, who had actually learned in the West. People like J.D. Kiano, people like Tom Boyer, you look at Dio Makasembo, Arguin Skodek. These are guys who came in, and they came in with the new economic ideologies pegged on African development. But when the issue of Pan-African died with them, you find out that the inflation rate became very high, population control became an issue, infrastructure became an issue, education became an issue, healthcare became an issue, and for them to revamp a clear-cut policy in development did not actually mark for it. Now, if you come also to the new constitution, for example, the new constitution is good, but then it has not created clear-cut mandate of the county government and the central government. All we are told today, and I'll come to the point after explaining this, all we are told today is that the counties have to be given money appropriated from the central treasury. But then, if you look at the U.S., for example, the U.S. system is able to work in tandem with the realities, because the congressional clause that gives the Congress to run commerce, what we call the Commerce Clause, comes with the conditions in that if a state wants to develop certain infrastructure and it wants money from the consolidated fund in the United States or the Treasury, what normally happens is the Congress will come up with a litmus test and say, look, we shall give you money so long as you do the following. We need uniformity if it's in transport infrastructure, so that the freeways you build in your state correspond to the freeways coming into your state and will correspond to the freeways going out of your state. And that's why we have interstate commerce, where the issues of taxation comes in. Those who are using interstate have to pay federal tax. Those who are within the state have to pay state tax. But Kenya has not reached there yet. Where Kenya is today is, let us borrow and give to the counties, but give counties conditions, for God's sake. You do this, let us see how you do it, and then we shall appropriate funds for you based on economic realities.
Accountability, that's the keyword.
Yes,
And
yes.
I think, Prof, let's just make this practical for Kenyans. Apparently, every 100 shillings we make, 54 is used to pay debt.
Yes.
Me, you, I don't know if you have double citizenship. Me, you, and so many other Kenyans have a debt of 100,000 Kenyan shillings at least, even our children. So what does that say about the status of this country?
Let me tell you this. I am a permanent resident in the UK.
Yes.
And also in the US. In the US, I pay taxes there, federal tax and state taxes, as I pay taxes here. So if you are giving me 100 shillings, probably I will end up with 24 shillings because of their stringent rules, and that's why the economy is actually running. But when you look at the system that we have here, the system is pegged on a few men and women who sit somewhere, who do not come up to collect views. Look at India, for example. India had refused anything to do with foreign aid and IMF because it said, let us do what is sustainable for us first.
Yes.
Let us find out what we can do to achieve certain targets as far as state economy is concerned. And you'll find out that if you look at the state of Kerala in India, what the government says, okay, you are good in this. You run it, collect taxes, but give us the following. But in Kenya, what normally happens is county governments are not involved in decision-making when it comes to acquisition of loans. County governors are not called on the table. There should be an issue. There should be some kind of state management and state stakeholder kind of conference to chart the way as far as economy is concerned. Kakamega has got Oparanya as a governor. Has he been called by the Treasury? Has he been advanced notice to give his views as to how we should actually borrow? Look, how would you be saying that out of 100 shillings, we are going to be paying 54 shillings in 100 shillings? We have seen what happened in 2013. We've seen what happened yesterday. Look at Tanzanian stand on this kind of borrowing, and listen to what Magufuli has said. This is just a monster that we are creating, but we are creating in a comfort zone, because people who are coming to take over the government in future will inherit a debt that will actually cause a crisis like what has happened in Namibia, where the armed forces are not even paid because of misappropriation of funds, corruption, which is not even part of the agenda 4 of the president.
Clearly, this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. It's interesting how we've drifted from LSK to matters economics. But thank you very much, Prof, for your input. Of course, that is Professor George Wagakoyah, who is a professor, at the same time professor in law.
Yes.
And doubles up as a political analyst. And it's exactly 55 minutes past, actually it's 5 minutes to 10 a.m. Many thanks for watching News Center. We're going to take a very short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back.